Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're coming to you from a secret location in Aberdeen. I'm here joined by the wonderful Becca Davidson from Morrison Scotch Whisky Distillers. Becca, thank you so much for travelling all the way up from Dalgety Bay to Aberdeen. When was the last time you were here?
I think it was just before the Aberargie launch, so it would have been about February time. I'm not often up here, so it's nice to be back.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously the weather is fantastic. I mean, we've had no shortage of heat over the last few weeks, as has most of Europe. And obviously we're going to talk a lot about Aberargie and all that sort of stuff as well. But first of all, can you tell us exactly what it is you do?
Yes, so I am the junior brand manager for Morrison Scotch Whisky Distillers. So I help to manage our portfolio of brands that we have from Aberargie, Carmore, Mactala, Old Perth and Brewdar. So it's a very small team. Myself and Lauren are the marketing department, and we do everything from PR, managing the digital channels, to events and NPD, you name it, we're doing it.
Nice, fantastic. So obviously, in terms of, for anyone who doesn't know exactly what it is, you do in terms of being a junior brand manager, what is your day-to-day actually like?
Oh, it changes every week. So, I mean, one week I could be directing a shoot, going out and about, seeing customers, or managing digital channels. Digital channels are kind of my niche. That's kind of what I do day to day. But because we have so many brands, it's very varied every week, which is a nice way to have it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say recently on your social channels, I saw you dressed up in a beekeeper's outfit. Is that a normal day for you?
I mean, normal, I don't know, but we do have our own beehives at the distillery, which is nice. We've had them for the last few years now. And I have been in a bee costume before, or a beekeeper's suit. But I think it's a nice way to kind of educate people with that interview that I did. Because bees are facing a lot of issues at the moment. So I thought it'd be a nice way to capture some content, but it was just not in the most glamorous costume, I guess.
But it takes out the typical 9 till 5 sitting at a desk scenario, right? So it's a little bit more fun, a bit more varied. And so obviously, would you say is being a brand manager about creativity? Is that kind of what you bring to the role?
Yeah, so there's so much to it, I guess, for us. Creativity is a huge part of it in terms of creating campaigns and making sure the brand is positioned where we want it to be. And then also in terms of creating content, posting the content, and writing copy for PR, for socials, for everything. Creativity is like a huge part in what I do. But then there's also the strategic element to it as well. So it's, a bit of everything, which is nice.
Yeah, and obviously Morrison is very much still kind of a family-run and owned whiskey company, right? And obviously with a long and amazing history, including Bowmore.
Yes.
On Isle as well, and we'll talk a bit more about that with the Mactala stuff as well. But so what is it like working in a family in that regard? Obviously, in terms of, for example, when it comes to tasting samples of the next launch, is it sort of a family sit around the table, or is there more like one or two people making all the decisions?
So it's quite nice because we are such a small team. I think there's about 19 of us. So when decisions are being made, we try and get everyone involved in as much as we can. And just this week, we were tasting some very exciting liquid, and we get to be a part of tasting that and giving feedback and things like that. But ultimately, it is our master distiller, Graham McKeddy, his decision, and he makes the big decisions. But it's nice to play a part in deciding on what we like, what we don't like, and ultimately what the liquid is going to be.
Yeah. And I think on that subject, I mean, obviously this is something I definitely want to talk to you about. The inaugural launch and release of Aberargie, which is actually a distillery that I think when you guys launched the first release, a lot of people actually hadn't heard of the distillery. Mm-hmm. And obviously for a first release, it was absolutely flying. And obviously having kindly been invited down to the launch in Edinburgh, I have to say, it's very rare, to try an inaugural release of that quality and standard and just absolute deliciousness when it comes to whiskey. So, I mean, like, give us a bit of background, in terms of Aberargie as a distillery and the first release. Give us a kind of a snapshot overall view of, what was it like bringing out that first release?
Yeah, so it was a long time coming because I started about 4 years ago now, and I came into the business with that kind of in my mind that I would be a part of helping to launch the brand. But at that point, it felt so far away. But now it's done. It feels like that time's passed so quickly. And I think the last 2 years, it really kind of ramped up. Because we've finalized that we wanted to kind of launch Aberargie. And yeah, the last 2 years have been like such an amazing experience because I know a lot of other people, they don't get to be a part of a brand from the ground up. So it's been really fun and really cool to be able to grow that brand from the very beginning.
And it's, I suppose in a way, it gives you free reign in a sense. You're working from a blank canvas as far as a distillery goes, because obviously 2017 was the day the distillery was actually established. So there's almost like no expectations. So if you knock out of the park with the first release, it can be a good or a bad thing because you guys have literally sold out the first run.
Yeah.
But you're then setting up expectations for the next round of releases as well.
I know, that was it. It was like we almost didn't anticipate it to like sell out so quickly. But I mean, it's been amazing that it has. But now we're kind of focused on how can we keep that anticipation there for future releases, because we can't have that kind of huge hype at the first release and then it kind of dips. We want to keep that going throughout the coming releases.
Yeah, so what exactly do you do day to day if you've sold out, just like I'm going to take a holiday for the next few months till the next release comes out?
Yeah, so we've tried to kind of release it in batches, so keep that kind of momentum going. And then we've been doing tastings throughout the last few months as well to keep that focus on Aberargie as well. But we do have lots of exciting things coming in coming months for Aberargie.
Can you tell us what they are? Or is it top secret?
I can tell you something. We've got some releases coming in the next few months, about September time. We have 2 limited editions, and all I'll say is that they will focus on some of Aberargie's 4 pillars. And that's as much as I'm going to say.
Wow, okay. So, and obviously in terms of this initial release as well, it's kind of like the best of everything. So you've got Golden Promise barley, and you've also got first fill ex-bourbon, ex-sherry cask, Oloroso, right?
Yes. Yes, we use first fill sherry, first fill bourbon, Oloroso and PX.
And PX as well. And bottled obviously at 48.2% for, you know, a non-age statement whiskey. This is literally the best of everything. You know, absolutely nailed it. So obviously we're going to be excited to see what's happening with the next Aberargie. But obviously I want to talk to you also about Mactala, which is another whiskey which is not even as old as the distillery.
Yeah.
So give us a bit of a snapshot about Mactala. What's that all about?
So Mactala started about 5 years ago when the Morrison family wanted to kind of reconnect to their Islay roots, because the Morrison family used to own Bowmore Distillery. So back in the 60s, they owned Bowmore Distillery. And when they sold it to Suntory, they wanted to kind of connect back to their Islay roots. So that's where Mactala was born. And Mactala is actually Gaelic for echo. So it's that us echoing back to Islay.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah. And with Mactala, we want to take you on a journey of taste. So I think a lot of people think of Islay as really one-dimensional, and it's only this really kind of TCP or smoky whiskies. But we want to kind of showcase that Mactala has a lot more to it, or Islay has a lot more to it. So you can get like really light, really floral whiskies. It's not all this kind of really heavily peated stuff.
So it's almost like the best of Islay, or the full spectrum of Islay, because you work with different distilleries, right?
Yeah.
So it's literally saying like, here's the full spectrum of Islay, peat smoke, and different kind of
showcasing everything.
Different casks. And the most recent one was the cognac cask for the Fraser release as well.
Yes.
Which again was kind of invited to, and that was absolutely delicious too. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic range, and I think obviously one which is going to gain a lot of traction as well. So how much time do you spend on that versus say like our Aberargie day to day?
So it's quite evenly split, I would say, across Aberargie, Mactala and Old Perth. Those are kind of our priorities. And then we also have Brewdar and Carnmore, which we work on throughout the year as well.
Yeah.
So we try and split it as evenly as possible. But difficult sometimes.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, when you're managing multiple brands, and I guess each one has a different priority in terms of the audience or like volumes.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, now that we've sold it at Aberargie, we can spend more time in McTalla and Old Perth. So, and how did obviously with like things like Brewder as well, which is obviously more of a sort of Scotch whiskey liqueur, and obviously for anyone who's never heard of it, what exactly is it made up of?
So Brewder is a Scotch whisky liqueur, and we have all natural ingredients in Brewder. So it's made up of whiskey, water, honey, sugar, basically. So we use honey from our own beehives at the distillery. So that's primarily like the key flavour in Brewder is honey. And then Highland whiskey as well. So it's perfect for cocktails. It's perfect on its own. You can really have it however you want. It's a great kind of, it can please a lot of palates.
So what's this? What if I was going to buy a bottle and make a cocktail? What's your top recommendation?
Oh, I was thinking about this on the way here, and I was like, oh, it's so tough because it works in so many different things. But I really like it in an espresso martini.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I love my coffee as well. So
yeah,
best of both. Also really good in a hot toddy in the winter. It's quite warm.
Probably quite good in a penicillin as well, I'd imagine,
yeah,
too.
That's
bit of ginger in there too.
Yeah. So
and a bit of McTalla on top.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then, so obviously, you know, in terms of obviously your experience, because how long have you been with Morrison?
It's been about 4 years now.
Okay. So that's your first step into the whiskey industry, really?
Yeah. I did work at Scotch Whisky Experience before. That was like where I realised this is the industry that I want to work in.
So that was your epiphany moment, and then you obviously went, I'm going to go and create loads of amazing whiskey brands and just take over the world. Yeah. So what's your experience like in terms of, you know, how you see the whiskey industry? Obviously, you've come into a very interesting time, obviously more like post-COVID era, which is obviously been a journey for a lot of whiskey brands and everyone working in it as well. So in terms of your like sort of, I guess, challenges or, you know, how you see the whiskey industry in terms of making a success in a career and so on, what are the main kind of challenges and obstacles that you personally want to overcome doing what you're doing just now?
I think, I mean, one of the drivers for me getting into the whiskey industry was the fact that at the time, and I think still just now, it was primarily like a male-dominated industry and there wasn't a lot of women working in the whiskey industry. So that was kind of a driver for me to get into the whiskey industry and kind of combat that stereotype. And I think that's just like an ongoing thing that's happening in the whiskey industry just now as well. You are seeing a lot more women in the whiskey industry, but it's all about kind of getting more women educated about whiskey and combating those stereotypes.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I imagine you work at a lot of whiskey festivals as well. Which whiskey festivals do you think, like, do you obviously love working at? Which ones are maybe more kind of, I don't know, old school, you think maybe aren't kind of nailing the mark? Have you got any sort of experiences there you can give us?
I don't want to be negative to any brands, so I'll say my favourite. I think London Whiskey Show smashes it every time.
Yeah.
Like that is just, it's on a different scale to anything else in the UK anyway. And I just love it. Like every year I go down, I'm so excited. Everyone's in high spirits and it's just cool to see like different brands, and there's always something new and interesting happening down there, which is amazing. I do think that whiskey festivals have become quite saturated, and I think it does just need something like, I don't know if it's some innovation or something fresh and new, because I think a lot of them are getting a bit samey maybe. But I mean, yeah, the London Whiskey Show is definitely my favourite anyway.
If you were going to do a whiskey festival tomorrow, how would you set up then to make it have a point of difference from the regular ones?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure, because that's tough. I think cocktails are becoming quite popular just now, so I'd maybe have a focus on mixing whiskey, but I don't know if the audience or the market is quite ready to go fully into mixing whiskey completely. So that's a tough one, because then I think the trend there was a big experimental kind of trend a couple of years ago, but now I think we're kind of going back on that and stripping it back to the basics. So on one end, it's like you could go cocktails with it. But then on the other end, it's like, do you go back to the kind of traditional, really simple kind of aspect of it. I'm not sure.
I think in tough times, the whiskey industry tends to play it safe, and I think that's what you're referencing. And I think a prime example of what you're talking about, the cocktails, is probably Paris. Whiskey Show is probably the gold standard of having that integration of drinks into it as well. I think the problem in the UK is that we're still quite backwards about mixing whiskey, especially in Scotland as well. But hopefully with things like Brewdar as well, you know, it's like a segue into saying you can mix whiskey and cocktails and make delicious highballs, penicillins, whiskey sours, espresso
absolutely.
martinis, all these kind of
you
things
name
as
it.
well. But, you know, it needs to become ingrained in the culture from the bars, from the brands as well. But, you know, right now, the past few years, to your point, I think there's less experimentation. But this has been an absolutely amazing catch up. And obviously, thank you for the amazing whiskey too. So cheers to you, Becca. Thanks for
Cheers.
coming up, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you soon. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.